Hello and welcome to Mental Health Awareness Week, Day 2. Today we're going to be specifically talking about my own incident and what happened to me. Back in 2016 I was diagnosed with what's called an acute manic episode. An acute manic episode is something that is symptomatic of bipolar. And in my case it was where I went really high and lost all concept of reality. This can also sometimes be referred to as psychosis. Psychosis is where one may hear delusions or hear things that aren't necessarily true or believe things that aren't necessarily true. Now I'm going to try and keep this between 3 and 4 minutes and very brief. However, this is quite a big story and so please forgive me if I skim over some of the details. On the day of the sectioning itself, I was very erratic, very confident, I was talking about conspiracy, talking about starting my own religion. The person that sectioned me was a GP who just carried on asking, was I hearing voices? I was then transferred to the hospital. However, there was not a psychiatrist on call there and I just grew to become more and more restless. So I stayed there for about 10 hours until the point I just wanted to leave. I needed to leave, however, everyone just said, Dan, you can't leave. Until the point when I decided to break out of the hospital. Now this was constructed by me essentially sitting down by the automatic doors and then running out when they brought in a new patient. I ran straight back to my uni house and within seconds police officers came in the house and put me in handcuffs, marched me down the stairs and took me out of the uni house. At this point I'm screaming, this is free will, this is what happens when you try and speak your mind, you know, thinking it's all about a conspiracy or something to try and shut me up. And they put me in this dog van, shut the doors and didn't get in. And at this point I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm even trying to whisper and then yell at my handcuffs and some thought they'd break off and they didn't obviously. I was then transported to Sunderland Mental Health Clinic. There I was taken from the back of the dog van. The whole journey of my mental health, I thought that people were great and really helpful, and they were, and everyone was really lovely until this point when I wasn't complying anymore. They grabbed me by the handcuffs and dragged me out the back. And I remember looking at the handcuffs and saying, if I put all my weight on these handcuffs, then surely these people will stop. Surely they'll see me in pain and they will stop. I did, and they didn't. They just carried on ploughing through. Now as they're taking me into this clinic, I'm starting to think, God, I'm taken to this scientific building. I don't know why, maybe I watched too many sci-fi movies, but I instantly thought, oh my gosh, I've been grown from stem cells. My whole life's a lie. My friends, my family, they're all fabrications, they're all injected memories. Now this obviously made me even more erratic and the clinic had to take measures to sedate me. Now this involved 3 people holding me down whilst someone injected me in the bum twice. I came round and had about 4 days treatment and then was moved down to Gloucestershire. I recovered for about 3 weeks before embarking on a journey to go to Australia for my study abroad, which has been something that had been planned previous to this mental health episode, and we just really wanted me to get there and thought we can just squish it, we can suppress it. It didn't really happen. Get Dan on his way. As soon as I got on that plane, everything kicked off. Everything kicked off. I started running around the plane, dancing, just in general euphoria of the fact that I was going to Australia, so happy. I went on the tannoy and pretended to be the captain. I went into first class and pretended to then be an air marshal. The cabin crew handed me a piece of paper that said, if I don't comply with the cabin crew and sit in my seat, they will be forced to ground the airplane. Now, I had a transfer in Singapore, so I landed, got taken to the clinic, and again, they were telling me the same thing, if you can't leave, and I was determined that I had to get on a flight to Australia. So at this point I just left the clinic. I was gone and went straight into a Hugo Boss store and said, fit me for your best tuxedo. And lo and behold, I was there getting fitted for a full Hugo Boss tuxedo. And no, I don't still have it. I have the socks though, and that's about it. But anyway, back to the story. They took me from there, full suit and all, back to the clinic. And at this point I hadn't been raising my voice or anything because I learned from the last time, I thought if I'm big, loud and confident and all that sort of stuff, they're gonna definitely think I'm mental. Whereas this time, if I'm relaxed and that element of it all, then they won't think I'm mental. Wrong, still thought I was mental. And so they put me in handcuffs first and then decided that they couldn't move me. And then they put me in a straitjacket and on this sort of wheelie Hannibal Lecter-like thing that took me from there into the back of a police car. And at this point I'm screaming and yelling through the whole airport about, well, where are you taking me, what's going on? I still had the scuffs on the shoes from where they dragged me out. They then took me to the Singapore Institute, and there, I can't really go into the specifics of it, but it was just really quite horrific. They tied both my arms and my legs down to the bed for the majority of a week. They trialled various different drugs on me until I was suppressed to the point that they were happy with. And when they came up to me and said, look, Dan, your parents are here, would you like to see them? And I was like, wow, this is amazing, guys. How have you got here so fast? It's only been 24 hours. And they said, Dan, it's been a week. And that was purely because I was being pumped with so many drugs that I'd only come around at night, and because of that I thought it was just the longest night of my life. Now there are other elements of the Singapore story. You can scream and you can shout and you can say, please help me, and they just look at you and don't do anything. I'm ashamed to say, I soiled myself, I threw my clothes across the room, anything in a desperate attempt just to get someone to pay actual attention to me and listen to what I was saying. I was then taken back home for recovery, and I'll obviously talk about recovery later on in the week. It's a very large story and there's a lot that goes on it. But the key thing is that I didn't understand what was going on for half of it. Mainly because I didn't know what sectioning was, and I didn't understand why I was being then treated like a prisoner would. But that's day 2, and that's the incident in a very, very condensed format. It's been a really hard one to make, this one actually, and I didn't see it being this hard. I think it's just trying to talk through it all and squishing it into a small bite-sized chunk, but I hope you guys take something from it. Tomorrow we'll talk more about the effect of then on my friends and family when I originally came home, and then on Thursday we'll be talking about recovery. But thanks guys, appreciate you taking the time. Cheers.